Hello, every single person out there, Facebook, YouTube, watching this stream. We are Take the Black, the only show on the internet that dares to talk about the things that the lamestream media, TM, I coined that term, won't talk about, like sci-fi, fantasy, dragons, space lasers, swords, horses, and such things as this. I am Dan Selcke, the editor of WintersComing.net,
Yes.
here with Daniel Roman, the other editor of WintersComing.net. Daniel Roman, how are you?
Hello.
Hi.
I'm doing spectacularly. It's a Wednesday. It's spring. I have no complaints. How are you, Dan?
I'm well. It's also nice. I'm about to go on a vacation. That's why I have suitcases behind me. The
Ooh.
dog's behind those. But as usual, I'm always, come, dog, show yourself. Be in the camera. It'll be fun.
He's not a show business dog.
There he goes. He's moving a little bit. Maybe he'll come up later. Anyway, we have a bevy to talk about. Hello, everybody. Hello, Margaret. Hello, Martha. Hello, Natalie. Welcome to the stream. And Daniel, I'd like to get right into it because we have some hot topics today. The first of which revolves around the HBO Game of Thrones prequel television series House of the Dragon, set some 100-some years before the original, telling the story of rival factions of the Targaryen dynasty battling for supremacy. And season one came out last year.
Yeah.
Thank you. It was great. People loved it. The ratings were solid. We thought it was really good. I had a couple complaints, but overall, definitely probably better than I was fearing. Definitely better than I was hoping. Even we really liked it. They're working on season 2, which is going to probably be due out next year, most likely. Filming begins either April or May, depending on which leaker you ask, but soon, shortly. Scripts are out, sets are built. Actors are talking about getting scripts. And we had last night a report from Deadline, which, just for those who don't know, is like a very reliable industry source that gets scoops. Talking about the second season, some changes, the series as a whole, and some shakeups behind the scenes. Essentially, and Daniel, I'm sorry if I'm talking a lot, but I figure I'll just narrate.
Tell me, I want to know.
We'll open up the discussion. Cool, great.
Sounds good.
Basically,
I'll drink coffee.
Deadline reports. The big headline is that the first season of House of Dragon was 10 episodes long. The second was originally going to be 10 and has now been pushed back to 8. Daniel, your first reaction, you want to give us a spit take, or are you horrified, pleased, what?
Well, I already swallowed the coffee, so I can't do a spit take, thankfully, for all of the electronic equipment around me. But I have been a big proponent of thinking it's not a good idea to do shorter seasons. Like I wrote an editorial about this a while back that I generally don't like that as a thing. But in this instance, I feel like it's probably for the right reasons. Because my first reaction when I saw this was, you know what? I could see it. That season 2, what I envision for season 2, I can't imagine them going past what I'm thinking of, is really like a chapter and a half of the book. So, and it's a lot of big battles. So this did not worry me the way that it would for another show, honestly. What was your reaction to this?
I mean, it's dependent on why they're doing it and what's actually happening. By the way, hello, Skill over on YouTube. Hey, YouTube peeps, how you doing?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not someone who just like almost, what's the word? Fetishizes episode count for its own sake. Like, honestly, if a series needs to be 7, 6, 4, 10 episodes, I think whatever's best is best. Like I think do that. I'm not a size queen when it comes to episode counts. Okay, but at the same time, like, remember Game of Thrones? Remember when the episodes everyone loved for the first 6 seasons, episodes apiece, and then it went to 7 and 6, and everyone said it was rushed, which I kind of agreed with. I thought they should have had more episodes. Some flashbacks, some Vietnam War flashbacks here. We don't want the story to be shortchanged. The longer story about why it was happening was Good, reassuring a bit. So basically, Deadline talked to a source, and
Okay.
it wasn't really clear whether it was like an official source or someone telling this to them. They called him like an HBO spokesperson. I wasn't sure if they were talking at a school
Yeah.
or if they were like saying this officially. I think at a school. So what they said was that originally the season 2 was going to be 10 episodes long, and then because the first season was such a big success, what HBO wanted to do was kind of
Mm-hmm.
make a plan for the whole thing. Like they want to do the entire series because for season 1, they only renewed
Yeah.
it after season 1 began to air and it did great. And then they were like, okay, season 2 is a go. But that meant that, they didn't have
Yeah.
things ready. Like they had to write new scripts and get a new writer's room together and get a new casting department going and doing all that. So HBO wants to do this a little faster. They're already looking at renewing season 3 early, which would hopefully mean it's a little more like Game of Thrones times when we didn't have to wait 2 years between seasons. And showrunner
Yeah.
Ryan Condal got together with A Song of Ice and Fire and Blood author George R.R. Martin. And what Deadline said is they kind of mapped out the rest of the show. Like they're kind of looking at it lasting 4 seasons, which sounds about right for this story, if it's based on this book, Fire and Blood, which is, as you mentioned,
Yeah.
just very different from Long West and Fire. It's like we're tapping like sentences to whole episodes, and it worked pretty good in season 1, so whatever, because it's much shorter.
Yes.
And in that restructuring process, when they were looking at, how long should it be, what should go where, what event should happen where, they moved something from the end of the original season 2 to the start of season 3, some kind of big battle, not sure which one, and came up with, we should do 8 episodes for season 2. So, and the spokesperson was careful that this isn't like a budget thing. This isn't like a David Zaslav is mandating that they reduce it. This is George R. R. Martin, Ryan Condal are thinking about it, and they think this is the best way forward. And if that's the case, obviously I'm cool with it. If it really is based on that, the trick there is how much of that is the God's honest truth, and how much is the HBO spokesperson spinning this in a positive light.
Well, I'm inclined to believe that House of the Dragon probably has the support to do whatever it wants in this instance.
So did Game of Thrones, though.
So did Game of Thrones. I think the big difference here is House of the Dragon is just getting started.
Yeah.
Whereas Game of Thrones had been on the air for, it was
6
less
years.
than a decade by the time season 7 started, but they'd been working on it for probably close to a decade at that point.
Oh, yeah.
In terms of the production
it was
itself.
an old man. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not many shows get to 6 seasons even.
No, it's true. Especially less and less now, it seems like. In kind of this prestige era of huge big budget shows. So I think I'm not worried about this. I feel like it probably is for the right reasons. I am really curious about what battle they're pushing back. I have a feeling
I was curious
probably
too.
There's only
try and say it like
thoughts,
without spoiling too much.
Okay, I will. I think obviously there are going to be battles everywhere. It's the Dance of the Dragons.
Sure.
To my eye, it either means they're pushing back what I figured would be the climax, which has to do with a certain, as you put it in the announcement for this, a kerfuffle in King's Landing.
Thank you. Love that word. Good word, kerfuffle.
Yeah. So I think either that's going to get pushed back, or they're going to take one of the things that happens before it and make it happen after, which I could see
I could see that.
Finagling if it's like a minor battle or something like that. But I just chuckled a second ago because I didn't even really think about this when I read this the first time, but I had a trauma flashback from you just talking about this, because that's what a George R.R. Martin move this is, to be like, we're pushing one battle back from the end of this into the next season, because that is like,
right.
That's what he said about A Dance with Dragons. It was supposed to have the battles at the end that got pushed back into the Winds of Winter at Meereen, a battle in the fire and a battle in the ice. presumably Marine and Winterfell, or Stannis at Winterfell. So it kind of cracks me up that House of the Dragon is taking a page from George's book here, and they're pushing some sort of battle back to season 3.
It's possible that George took a
hopefully-
page from George's book, and like actually he suggested this.
It's true. You know what you could do? You could push that battle back to next season. Yeah,
You know what?
I mean, who knows?
We can't get under the deadline. We're
That's
gonna have
funny.
to push it back. Yeah, that's interesting. I love
Oh,
Martin
that's
impressions.
funny.
Into books. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's cool. I figure that they have to have Rook's Rest. I won't say what happens with this stuff, because that's like not too far in. They got to have Blood and Cheese, obviously. They're probably going to have the twin, the Cargill Bowl. They're probably going to have the Battle of the Gullet. Those are all
gotta have
coming
the
up pretty
gullet.
quick.
Yeah.
That'd make a good ending. It would make kind of a similar ending to season
It
1,
would.
frankly. But parallelism that they can make it work. They can make it work for them. So basically, if the way Deadline is presenting it is the truth, then I'm cool with this. And you know, this also
Same.
kind of sheds light on the announcement that you know, the Crown guy David Hancock is joining to write 2 episodes. So okay, if they're restructuring a bit, makes sense they bring in somebody new. I will say, here's one final bit of trepidation that not long ago. Oh, by the way, Zach has a great comment on YouTube. They probably have a story they want to tell and a spot they want to stop at, and realize they don't need 10 episodes. Better than getting 2 slow filler episodes, which, yeah, I agree with.
Yeah.
You know, I will say
Same.
one thing Game of Thrones never had and House of never had was filler. I don't think, like, there really was never an ounce of fat on this thing. It's just not that kind of show or not that kind of story.
Yeah. There's too much, you know, there's so much that it's like, what would a filler episode even look like? They're juggling,
I don't know.
you know, 10 plot lines all at once in the first place.
Camilla's salty about it, by the way. I understand my perspectives. I think it's too early to tell. I mean, again, if the Deadline narrative is right, I think it sounds good. However, I want to note that there were rumors a while back which were much less charitable. And there were rumors going around
That's true.
this kind of online about oh, totally. I mean, when I heard about this.
I didn't think about that.
That they're that things are being rewritten. They have to bring in they're bringing in George R. Martin to help, and this does sound like the positive version of that. Like, this sounds like the official line. Now, the difference in that is that Deadline has sort of it's about the story, it's about long-term planning, it's about saving time between seasons, it's all for the best attitude, and the rumors were like, it's a mess. They have to rewrite everything. Nothing's working. They're bringing George R. Martin. So they're kind of the same thing. The difference was like the pessimism
the spin
versus optimism spin on it. What's the truth? Probably somewhere in the middle, but I would imagine we're not really sure. And thank you, Andrew, for loving the live streams.
Yeah, glad you're here, Andrew. Yeah, I would imagine it's somewhere in the middle. And you know, it's kind of indicative of what you'd expect, right? Anytime something is internet gossip, it's probably going to have a slightly more negative spin. And when a big publication is reporting on it, they might be a little more hesitant to really be like, this is a shot. Yeah, it's a sign the show is falling apart. I will say, I could see this working really well, especially, again, keeping things low spoiler. You mentioned parallelism before. If something like if King's Landing, whatever happens there, is what gets pushed back to season 3, there will be multiple King's Landing things happening that season. I could see that being a really good parallel of like starting and ending the season with some King's Landing stuff.
Yeah, that
we're
going
to see quite a lot of stuff there.
There's lots of ways to go.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. So aside from just the fact that I could easily like imagine how it could work out well to restructure in this way, I also think this is different than Thrones because 8 episodes is a normal thing now. So it's not just like they're gutting the show. It's like a lot of shows get 8 episodes now.
And I mean, and that's longer than Thrones got. I would have liked it if season 7 or 8 got 8 episodes. Could have helped a lot.
Exactly. Yeah. So, reasons for some mild trepidation, but this is one of those things where we're going to kind of have to see what it looks like when it comes out. But I'm not too worried just based
I'm
on
not
this
too worried
alone.
either. It is interesting. And it is interesting how this is basically
Yes.
the
Yes, it
positive
is.
version of that rumor that we heard and weren't given a lot
And
of credence to
confirms some
before.
of it.
I mean, I
Yeah. And
guess
confirms some of it. Well,
it's
George
all
being
about,
involved.
right. It's just remarkable how like the same set of facts can inspire completely different reactions depending on like how you phrase it and how you present it. Like the good version, the bad
Yes.
version. By the way, some great
That's
comments.
funny. Relevant to the
Nathan,
other thing we're going to talk about today.
that is true. Nathan says that
That's the theme of the show.
about the filler episode that they left out a whole child in the first season, Darren Targaryen. I assume we're talking about Nathan, and that didn't have room for filler. They're gonna bring him into season 2. Was the last word on that? But I mean, Frank, maybe not. Who knows what they're being restructured? I hope they do bring him in. Andrew asked, "What do we like more, Game of Thrones or House of the Dragon?" I think it's too early to tell. I thought the first
Agree.
seasons were very competitive with each other. Game of Thrones is more flawless, probably. But I
I'll
thought
just say
House
I
of the
like Game of
Dragon,
Thrones more.
yeah, probably. House of the Dragon was close.
There's a lot less
It's close.
there's a lot less
I think
incest
it
in
could
it,
have.
and I personally support that.
Wait, you
that there
you don't think the
that
incest
there's
is a selling point? Weird. Okay, whatever. But
I
sure.
think if I had to choose which I'd rather watch, I would much rather watch ice zombies than incest. But yeah,
I'm honestly not
it's
sure. If
early
the
to
incest
tell.
is great, give me some more incest. But I like Game of Thrones more, but I am not anti-incest on TV. In real life, yeah, I love
Fair.
disclaiming this. Um,
There
I
you
was
go.
on board for the incest in House of the Dragon. Damon Shippers,
All
Damon.
right, you heard it here first.
It was. Come on, as long as Amy gets plenty of screen time. And Alice, yes. And Jay Patel says they said they're unsure whether to end the series 3 or 4 seasons. 4 seasons like that out. Yeah, Jay, the article said that they weren't quite sure whether it was 3 or 4, but they were leaning towards 4, which of course I would prefer. More is better for me.
Yeah,
Yeah. And
I think
Lizzie is
4 has
excited to
kind of
get to
been what
Westeros,
they've hoped
Eerie
for.
Winterfell to meet Cregan Stark. There's a lot of good stuff in the future, and I'm curious. Hopefully,
Truth.
2024 will be out. And yeah, as by the way, great comments, people. Thank you for keeping these coming. As Martha says, it could be another good thing if it means we have less of a wait time between seasons, which planning it out all that ahead of time and renewing things earlier would be great. And just in general, HBO is really riding high, man. House of the Dragon and The Last of Us. They now have the 2 biggest genre shows on TV, and they can run them one year after another. They're in a good spot right now.
Yep.
I just hope this
they
is
are.
all for the best.
I think one other thing to keep in mind, this is my last point to put across for this change. With Shadow and Bone, one thing that I heard the showrunner say is Netflix gave them the option. You can have 10 episodes or you can have 8 episodes with a higher production value. And I imagine House of the Dragon is early enough in production where that is going to apply here too. It's not like their budget is getting slashed to have 8 episodes. I imagine they're still going to get the same budget over less episodes, so they'll be able to make them bigger and better. That's the
Maybe.
hope. We'll see what actually happens.
I mean, I could see it. I could also see just because with respect, Shadow and Bone is not House of the Dragon. Like House of the Dragon is like award-winning, Emmy-nominated kind of prestige fantasy trash, where Shadow and Bone is more normal fantasy trash. I'm not sure they'd have access to as big of a budget, but maybe.
Well, no, that's not really my point. Is not that their budgets are comparable. It's that House of the Dragon probably will still have the budget it had, but it will be allocating it to less episodes, so it can put more budget in each episode. That would be something I'd hope to see from this, but we'll see.
And then there's the Jon Snow show Martha brought up. Tulki did not enjoy Shadow and Bone as it went on, which I think we are both in agreement with Tulki. Dan did not like it either.
Yeah.
Oh, pardon me. And I like Nathan's asking whether they needed to bring in George to fix the Darren gap. I love that, the Darren gap or the Sea Smoke ownership issues. They should have asked him at the start about sea smoke and stuff. We're getting off topic though. Shall we
We're in the
move
weeds
on
here, but
to
sure.
I mean, I love the weeds. The weeds are great. Give me in the weeds. Should we move on to our next juicy, gossipy drama channel type topic?
Yeah, unless you had a little map you wanted to show. Do you want to skip
Oh,
that, or
right.
do we want to
No,
touch
no, no.
on
Yeah,
that
yeah. Let's do it.
Because I thought that was
Um,
pretty cool. What's the deal with this?
It is pretty cool. So, okay. A Game of Thrones fan named Clint Stevenson went to the Cushing Library at Texas A&M University, which is where George R. R. Martin like sends all his personal papers. Authors have this sometime, like a repository for the papers.
Mm-hmm.
And he found a map of Westeros drawn in 1993, 3 years before a Game of Thrones came out, the first ever Game of Thrones book. And just this is like a really early conception. It's really kind of cool. The shape looks the same, but Harrenhal is where the Eyrie is. And
Oh, interesting.
yeah, and Harren, like, there's no castle by the God's Eye, which is where Harrenhal is now, like, is in canonically. So he changed the location of Harrenhal. I think like Sun Spear is called like Iron Rod or something, a different name. The Arbor is called the Roin. So he just kind of changed things around.
Okay.
Interesting stuff.
Oh, that's interesting. The Arbor is called the Roin. So there's I always love looking at Martin's like older works or broader works, because the Roin, obviously, that is the river in Essos that I believe Nymeria came from.
Yes, it is.
So it's always cool to see how like the Eyrie that's a thing in other books of his, like Windhaven. There is a place called the Eyrie. So it's like he likes to shuffle things around once he decides he likes them. That's really cool.
He likes birds.
I love seeing
it
stuff
is really
like
cool.
that.
And by the way, someone asked about the Mandalorian. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But first, Daniel,
Yes.
What is going on in the drama corner of the internet, and who does it involve, and why should we care?
Okay, well, one of the biggest dramas of the past week since last we spake was revolving around Brandon Sanderson,
who is
huge best-selling fantasy author. He finished The Wheel of Time. His own works, like the Stormlight Archive and Mistborn, are big enough that he's basically like one of, if not the best-selling living fantasy author right now.
Gotta be
Wired.
Best,
yeah. I think he probably is the best-selling living currently, partially because he just writes so many books.
Yeah.
So he's selling a lot of books. But
according to
Wired
the article,
did a profile,
he made $55 million last year,
which is a total misnomer. It's just an incorrect statement.
It is.
So
is that not right?
They were taking. It is not right. They were taking the kick. So we're gonna get into this. So Wired published a profile on Sanderson. They sent a journalist out.
How many ways was he wrong?
It was Jason Keehee. A lot of ways. And basically the profile just evolved into mudslinging. It was basically about how this journalist couldn't wrap his head around how Brandon Sanderson is popular. He doesn't understand why people like him because he personally did not like Sanderson's writing. And that is the whole premise of the article. The article really does not tell you very much
engaging
about
conversationalist.
Sanderson.
It doesn't. So weird. This guy,
so
Jason Keehee, who, don't go slag him off or anything, but just,
Sanderson has asked you not to. So
about using his name, because like his name's on it. This guy profiles this hugely successful, very influential fantasy author, Brandon Sanderson, and the entire article just reads so bizarrely. He's like condescending the whole way through. This quote got me. Like, he sits across from me in an empty restaurant, kind of lordly and sure of his insights, in a graphic t-shirt and ill-fitting blazer, which he says he wears because it makes him look professorial. It doesn't. He isn't. Like, the little slights throughout are just so petty and just seem so out of place. His wife is there, his biggest fan, always his first reader, making polite comments. I don't care. Maybe nobody writes about you, I say to Sanderson, because you don't write very well. He's like, this guy is like trying to, I don't know what he's trying to do. Like, convey the idea that he's some kind of rebel, like gonzo writer who's not afraid to take it there and do things that people won't, but he just comes across as a guy who has never been around a nerd before and wants to push him into a locker.
Yes.
It's so weird.
Yeah. And a lot of the comments are just, again, like the examples you just used, they're really not very helpful. They don't really tell you anything. They're just like cruel asides. So there's a whole like can of worms with the ethics of this thing that it just, I will just say for me personally, it made me really look at Wired in a different light as well. You're basically a tabloid because you had this opportunity to interview this huge author and all you could find were just ways to basically insult him for being a nerd, insulted his fans.
And a Mormon, don't forget
insulted
that.
one of his children. Yeah, and here's the irony with this. This is the thing that gets me with this. Okay. So there is an actual controversy around the fact that Sanderson tithes money to the Mormon Church. And the Mormon Church is famously anti-LGBTQ. And Sanderson has talked about that. It was supposed to be a B, yeah. But here I am. So that is a whole thing. And Sanderson has responded to it. It is a fascinating topic to hear his opinion for how he justifies it. And
what a great thing to write about. How interesting would it be if we heard something about that?
Yeah. And so totally sidestepped this actual thing that is very newsworthy and worth discussion to basically make jibes about the fact that he's religious and how that seems weird to this writer who came off of the throne of San Francisco and flew out to frozen, lame Utah, which that sounds like I'm being
I didn't like their Japanese sushi food. No, that's exactly what he wrote. This like,
there are
I can't believe I dragged myself away from my good food and my warm place to go to Salt Lake City, where it's cold and the sushi isn't up to par with what I get back in San Fran. Oh my God, it sounded like such a just a your baby thing.
Yeah, so this is the thing where it's like, not only is this just bafflingly short-sighted, but it also is just bad journalism because I feel bad for the people who read it, who read Wired, who don't know enough about Sanderson to know that it's not an informative article, who now know less about Sanderson than they did when they read it, because there's so much misinformation in it. And so the Mani thing, apparently just misspeaking is the name of what I'm doing today. The income for 2022 saying he made 55 million. So that is including Sanderson's Kickstarter profits. One that is his company, Dragonsteel, had a record-breaking Kickstarter, but a Kickstarter is not profits. They were saying this is his income, and it's not his income. It is a business endeavor he did, most of which is going to go toward the overhead of fulfilling the Kickstarter. It's not profits he's taking home. It's not what he made in the year.
So not only did this Jason Key guy like was just snide and condescending throughout the entire thing, he didn't even get the facts right, really, or at least presented them in a way that was very misleading. It's like nothing.
That's what this. That is. Yeah, that's my opinion.
Like the Mormon bit. Like there are legitimate reasons to have critiques of the Mormon church, and I believe that. They are, as you said, notable for having some policies that are anti-LGBTQIA+. That's how you say it. Warp on the boots. But the way that this guy did it, he just like there's a line there. He literally like says to Brandon Sanderson, like, "So you believe all this stupid stuff, right?" And like that's the critique. That's just rude. That's disrespectful. That's not a critique. That's not like a structural criticism of an organization that could actually yield some interesting discussion. That's just you being a bully about the guy's religion to his face. And that's what he chose to go with. And the bits where he complained, like there are long stretches where he's like, Sanderson is giving me nothing quotable, nothing I can use. And we're naming all these things you could ask him about: the Kickstarter, the actual issues with Mormonism, You know, the way he builds his worlds. Just sure, like look at the fact that he has some family working for him and talk to them about what they do and why they like it and why they're part of this job. There's so
Yeah.
many avenues to go down. I don't believe whatever Sanderson was saying in these stretches that he said weren't quotable. I think he's wrong. I probably in there was good stuff.
Completely agree.
He just did not cotton on to because apparently his interests are like these weird myopic tunnel of whatever he was looking for he didn't find, and he was probably like being just pelted with gold and just ignored it because I don't know what's the matter. The bits where he said he like cried in the shower because nothing, or that Brandon Sanderson showed up for his home theater and then he cried
Hugh
watching
Jackman.
The British Showman because he hates the movie so much. So weird. So weird. The bits where he went to the convention and basically like called his fans like that they all smell bad, that they're smelly nerds. Just it read and I think Sanderson responded on Reddit saying like it read like a 1980s takedown of nerds, which it did. It read like this guy has never
totally
been
did.
around a nerd. He's never been around a nerd. Like, okay, yeah, he's gonna talk at length about like dragons and crap you find boring, and he wants to show off his cool like home theater system, and he signs a lot of autographs for folk who are in costumes. Like, dude, this is not abnormal stuff for nerds. This is pretty standard stuff.
No.
And you're treating it like you've just stumbled into some kind of aboriginal civilization cut off from the rest of the world, just newly discovered, of people who like don't know what I don't know, like a bathtub is. It was, oh my God, it was bad.
Yeah.
It's bad.
Yeah. So this happens.
Don't harass him.
Don't harass him. Sanderson has asked people to leave him alone, and you have to respect that. He responded. His response was very kind. You can find it on Reddit. You can find it on winteriscoming.net. Dan wrote up a great article about it. But yeah, generally I very much agree with all the things you're saying. The one last takeaway that I really had is the end point of this story, the thing that made the story for this person, is Sanderson saying, as I build books, God builds people. And this person was like, what did you say? And
as if it's some kind of weird, bizarre key to his secret cult. I don't know.
But here's the funny thing about this, right? So I am saying this, I'm not Christian, Mormon, any of those things. But having any sort of spiritual language or understanding, that doesn't seem very profound. And basically Sanderson responded on Reddit and said the ironic thing is I don't even remember. Yeah, he said I don't even remember saying that because that's not a huge profound thing to me. That's just you know, I make books, God makes universes and people. Cool. So yeah, it seemed much more like a personal journey of discovery for a writer who couldn't wrap their head around how someone was more famous than they are when they're so much cooler.
And they're so much cooler. Yeah, good call.
It's a shame because, you know, fame and perception, you know, someone can seem famous to you, but if you don't take a step back to understand how your perception affects what you think is famous, you can fall into the trap this guy did, which is, who's this nerd no one's heard of? Meanwhile, he's like the best-selling fantasy author in the world. So
there was definitely a lack of perspective and self-awareness. Yeah, I could see that. But the fact that Sanderson is being profiled, because we've said before, we're like a breath away from his books being adapted to the screen somewhere.
Oh, sure.
Like, he's too successful for Hollywood not to notice at this point. You can't get around it.
So sooner or later did it for him.
Yeah. So we'll have that stuff going on pretty soon. And you said that another publication got an interview with him, probably jumping on this one. Did he say anything about that in there, or anything interesting in general?
Yes. Yeah, so it's ironic. All the things we're saying, they could have done this. Esquire published an interview with Sanderson today that basically did all the things we're saying you could have done. So theirs is great. I highly recommend checking it out. It really gets into the nuts and bolts of his business and all this different stuff. what he's trying to do with his publishing. And they did touch on this. So Esquire went down, it seemed like, right around the same time that the dude from Wired did. And they actually had their interview scheduled to go up the same weekend as the Wired one. And they pushed it back because obviously the Wired one just ate all the air out of the room because it was viral for how awful it was. And what they did is they pushed it back, and they reached out to Sanderson and Jason Kihei and said, hey, do you want to talk about this Wired piece that happened?
Sure.
So here's what Sanderson said over the phone a few days later. He said, I felt betrayed. That was the strongest feeling I had after spending so much time talking to Jason about things he seemed so interested in. Ironic, said he's not interesting. He seemed interested. But I respect him as a colleague. He's a writer,
nice.
So he has to write what's true for him, just like you do, to the writer from Esquire, and just like I do. And then Sanderson tells me he hasn't heard from Kihei or anyone else at Wired since the profile ran. But I hope I can talk to him again at some point, Sanderson says. Anytime I get criticism from anyone, my job is to listen. And he compared
He's really
it to...
coming off well here.
He really is. He compared the experience to something from the Cosmere, which is his fantasy universe. One of the main themes in my Mistborn books is that it's worth trusting people even though they can hurt you. It's better to trust and be betrayed in real life too. So that is the tack he's taking, which is just class act. They did reach out to Kihei they reached out to the journalists from Wired as well, and the only response, they asked him a bunch of things about was he surprised of the responses to the story? Why did he read so many of Sanderson's books if he didn't like them? The journalist just wrote back, as I've said to others, the piece belongs to readers now. They get the last word.
Okay,
so
the last word is your piece sucks. That's
all
my
of
word.
you out there, there's one other one. I'm going to see if I can find it real quick.
All right, while you do that, I will say to Andrew, thanks for the comments on the Phantom Madness poll. Yeah, we'll put the new polls up today. Only two. There are only two left. It's going to be Dream versus Aziraphale and Crowley. The Gaiman people are really into it. And then Joel versus Spider-Man. And I'm going to tell you right now, Andrew, if you want Joel to win, you're going to have to work hard because those Gaiman stands have come out in force. Neil Gaiman actually wrote very, very briefly on his Tumblr, like 3 words about the polls, which I am very excited about. Thank you, Neil Gaiman. But I hope that the polls are fierce. I hope that The Last of Us gets wind of this. So yeah, you boost us too. And then Neil Gaiman boosts on the other side. And then we'll have a proper battle royale.
Yeah.
Find your quote, Daniel.
I did. So this last one revolves a little bit around like the criticism that Sanderson got with his Kickstarter. A lot of people saying support more diverse authors, support authors at the beginning of their careers, like all sorts of different reasons for, when someone's really successful, people like to take shots at them.
Yes.
And basically, so this is before the Wired profile, this next quote, and I think this is a good one to leave the Sanderson topic on. They asked, were you surprised by the criticism when your Kickstarter did well? And he said, I wasn't surprised. When you're at the top of your field, you're a lightning rod for criticism, and that's actually healthy. The industry needs that. We don't need people criticizing the person just starting out. This is where the criticism should go, he said, pointing at himself. And again, it's kind of like it speaks for itself. The article painted him in a real bad light, and everything he's said since then is just like, he's just a nice person trying to write books people like.
Damn, folks could study his responses for like examples of how to do PR well after a kerfuffle.
They really could.
Because this is very good management, and I'm sure it's sincere, but it's
same.
It's a very good template. But okay, enough about Brandon Sanderson, up and coming. Woo! I mean, he is, because he's his career isn't done rising. Like, once he gets into Hollywood, you think he's successful now, he could become that much bigger, and he could have like
he's a 20-year overnight, 15-year overnight success.
Any case, Daniel and everyone out there, you guys watching anything? Did you watch The Mandalorian, Daniel? The new one?
I I have not had a chance to watch the new Mandalorian quite
Neither
yet,
have
because I've been embroiled in the Sanderson stuff a little bit today. So I haven't seen it. If you guys out there have seen it, what did you think of the latest
I. Yeah, let us
episode?
know.
Um, I
I haven't watched
liked
either
the
yet.
last
I
one
will, but
before
just not
this.
yet. I
Cool.
did too.
Yeah, same. I will probably watch it later tonight. I've been enjoying this season. I'm still feeling a little bit of the franchise fatigue just by how,
Yeah,
much they rely on linking it to other stuff. Um,
it's a
but I'm
shame
liking
because
this
it
season
is
more than I
it
expected.
is well done. But yeah, it's just hard to
Yeah.
escape that just there's some hype let out of the tires where there's just so much Star Wars stuff. Something that has a lot of hype
Yeah.
around it, I thought lived up to it was John Wick Chapter 4. I saw it over the
Yeah.
weekend.
Tell me,
Keanu
how
Reeves
was it?
like killing. It was great. I mean, these movies do not miss. They are just a excuses to stage these incredibly elaborate, very fun
Yeah.
action sequences in like real locations with a lot of stunt work, and they're just so much fun to watch. You can just tell people are just these
Yeah.
are action filmmakers passionate about dazzling you in ways that
Yeah.
don't feel cheap or overly CGI'd and and at the same time it's also the movies have succeeded in making their own little weird pocket universe with its own rules about this like
Yeah.
assassin economy that John Wick exists in. And they've gotten like fairly complex and stylized to the point where like
Yeah.
I wonder what the fanfic folk are doing with John Wick. So those two threads are both really fun, and then Keanu Reeves is a very appealing through like leading guy who just kind of drags you along emotionally and has a real arc, even though he says like I think 8 words total. It's great. I loved it. I loved watching it. I hope the series continues. I'll watch the spinoff probably. I have become a fan of John Wick in the past like 6 months. I watched the movies and we're like, how have I not watched these before? And then saw this, and then this first one I saw in the theater. It was great. I recommend it. Rock on, John Wick.
Awesome. I'm really surprised that the mythology has grown to the point that it has. Well, I guess surprised is the wrong word, but watching the first one, if you had asked
Mhm.
me when I watched the first one or two, that wouldn't have been the thing I predicted. Like this will go on to the point where like we actually have conversations about the Continental and the ballerinas and stuff. Um,
Yeah, and the
but
high
the
table and all this like there's
yeah,
you if you want a franchise, pretty much all for like fantasy and this is a fantasy franchise more or less, start having a mythology for the fans to like cling on to. You want the lore, like you want some stuff
yeah,
for people to have a way to think that they're fans of this, like a secret handshake almost. Like, do you know the
yeah,
rules behind how this duel's supposed to work? Then you're a fan. It's that kind of thing. It's fun.
yeah. And they kind of like ease you into it in a way that I think worked
Yeah.
really well. Because, like you said, John Wick is, if you want to study doing action scenes well in a way that will not make your
Man.
audience's eyes glaze over and still
Hmm.
be telling cool stories, John Wick is just at the top of that game right now.
Ooh,
Um,
so good.
I
So
wonder
good.
if they're going to make another one. That has been a big conversation topic in the past week.
Yeah,
We'll
we're not
see.
sure. I won't spoil the end, but it's they could not. It opened really
Question.
strong, so if it makes enough money, I don't know, it might be happening no matter what we want it or not.
Yeah.
We'll see. Watch anything else, Daniel?
I haven't really been watching over much this week. I've been reading Six of Crows still
Overmuch,
by Lee
Overwatch.
Bardugo.
Ooh,
Yeah,
literary man.
and yeah, and that's been really good. I'm definitely to the point. I saw one journalist tweet about this and it cracked me up, and I thought it was on point that the Shadow and Bone book fans didn't like season two, but still want the show to succeed because they really want the Six of Crows spinoff. And I will
People
say now
love
that,
that Six of
that I'm
Crows.
into Six of Crows, yeah, I totally, totally agree with that because I want that show. I think if we've made it through 2 seasons of Shadow and Bone, we deserve the Six of Crows spinoff. So I hope it happens. The other main thing I've been doing, and I'll just touch on this briefly because it's a George R. R. Martin related thing. So I've been playing Elden Ring a lot. I finally beat Elden Ring after
Good for
many,
you.
many hours. Thank you. Thank you. I was very proud. But the thing that cracked me up, so I don't know if you remember this, but like when it came out, there were a lot of hot takes like, what did George R. R. Martin even contribute to this? Like, he doesn't play games. Like, what did he really do? Um,
Sure. I
and
still wonder
I've
that.
just got to, well, I will say now that I'm getting into the lore of Elden Ring, it is the
Hmm.
most George R. R. Martin stuff I've ever heard in my life. Like, it is so
Yeah.
obviously his style. The demigods are families that are clashing over the land and stabbing each other in the back. It is so on brand for him. And
I mean,
they
it is,
confirmed
but
he did like the history of the
sure.
world. So that is
It
what he did, was the backstory for them.
it's also not that dissimilar from like the lore in Dark Souls or Bloodborne, though. Like that also has
That's
some of the
fair.
same themes going on. So
Yeah,
they made a good match, Miyazaki and George R. R. Martin,
exactly.
because they thought alike
Yeah,
anyway. It's kind of hard to
that's
disentangle.
exactly what I was gonna say. They totally
Hmm.
seem like a perfect pair to build a world like this together. But yeah, that's the main thing I've been up to in the past week. But so the Dungeons and Dragons movie comes out
Yeah,
this
Friday.
weekend, next
Hmm.
weekend.
This
Are you
weekend.
gonna go see it?
I don't think I'll have time this weekend. I hear it's good though. Our reviewer,
I've been hearing a lot of good things.
Richard Urquiza did not like it. But to be fair, Richard, if you're
That
watching,
sounds right.
you don't like much. What do you
You're
love?
harsh, Richard.
But yes, he I mean, he didn't think it was terrible, but he thought it was, I don't know, like a
That's
roll to 10, if you will.
okay. Okay.
I hear
From
it's
Richard,
good,
I'll
but
take that as a glowing review.
I won't see it this weekend. I won't have time, but I'm curious about it. Are you gonna see it?
I'm not going to see it this weekend, but I will definitely be watching it. That and John Wick, I'll probably get to next week at some point.
John
Maybe
Wick,
before
yeah.
our next show. I'll have seen at least one
Cool.
of them.
I also watched Succession, the season 4 premiere. Show's as good
Oh,
as
how
ever.
is it?
It's the final season. It's great. It's great. It was great. They always have
Cool.
every episode. They have a thing where they kind of skip forward to the next inflection point and they just tell the story about that. They don't really do like a Game of Thrones, like stories move on bit by bit. It's like the next big event. And yeah, the
Yeah,
Roy kids versus the Roy dad, loved it, into it, want more of it. I'll watch it. And
cool.
Perry Mason too continues to be good as well. And what do we think of the new Lord of the Rings movies coming? Asked Andrew. TBD, but have a bad feeling
Yeah,
about this, but we'll
definitely
see what happens.
TBD.
Anything else?
Yeah,
Anybody
that.
out there or you are watching before we move on, Daniel?
No, I am ready to lightning round. I will just say, yeah, we'll see what happens with the Lord of the Rings movies. I'm giving it a side eye until I've got a real
Mm.
good reason not to.
By the way,
And
Steven's excited
Stephen
for the
Howie
D&D
says,
movie. Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, not expecting an art film. That makes
Oh,
sense. Why would you? But you're expecting to laugh and enjoy some references to the
yeah,
game I love. I feel like that's
that sounds fun.
exactly the attitude to go into that with.
Yeah,
Leo asks, did anyone see Swarm? I
I
have
didn't.
not, but I've heard nothing but good things about Swarm.
Yeah, me
So
too.
I didn't know anything about it until like a week and a half ago, but I've just seen so many people talking it up that I might need to watch it.
Some fun stuff breaking out. Let's see if we hit any fun little smaller breakout stories in the Wick News lightning round, where Daniel and I and
The nice
guests
transition.
sometimes. Thank you. Go through some
I
stories
enjoyed
we
it.
didn't have time to get through in the main body of the show and give our 20-second takes. We go over 1 second. We are punished horribly off camera. How? None of your business. Anyway, Daniel, let us
Yes.
begin. As usual, didn't arrange, blah, 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 blah. Okay, I'm gonna ask you first.
Okay.
Daniel Roman, 20 seconds on the clock.
Yes.
Please give us your opinion on this first look at Lady Gaga as Harley Quinn in Joker Folie à Deux, the Joker sequel to the Joaquin Phoenix movie.
I it gets me excited. I like Lady
Mhm.
Gaga a lot. I'd love to see her do a really unhinged role like that. So
Shouldn't be that hard.
yeah, just gets me hyped. I want to see how this turns out. I'm more curious for this than any other DC movie coming in the remote near future.
Yeah, Perfect. Go on.
Under the buzzer. All right. So this is a less happy story, but an
Yes.
important one. So Jonathan Majors, who is Kang in the MCU, was arrested and arraigned on charges of assault and harassment over the past weekend.
Yeah. The story is still coming together, but basically the story is Jonathan Majors assaulted a woman, possibly his girlfriend, in New York. He was arrested, arraigned. We'll see what happens. His lawyer says he's innocent, but of course her lawyer says he's innocent. The charges are still there. Good Lord, couldn't come at a worse time because he's huge right now. He's in Creed. Yep. He's in Marvel. So we'll have to see how that works out because that could cause some big problems for Disney going forward.
That's exactly
and for a lot
and
for a lot of folk. And of course, we hope justice is served as well. Whatever situation is.
Yeah.
Whatever they suss out in the legal process. All right, Daniel. A bit more mild of a story.
Yes.
The 7th season of Outlander is coming. It's going to release in 2 8-episode chunks. The first premieres on June 16th, and the second sometime next year.
Yeah. So this is actually something Outlander has done before during its first season, I believe, and it worked great. So I think that's fine that they're going to release it in chunks. I'm excited for. I think this new season of Outlander is probably going to be really good. They've had a lot of time to iron out any kinks. It's an ambitious part of the story, the Revolutionary War. Thumbs up here.
Finally.
So Dan, this is cool. We were just talking about this earlier. So Black Panther director Ryan Coogler is rebooting the X-Files with a diverse cast.
Yeah, so says Chris Carter, the guy who made the original X-Files show. Yeah, sure, why not? The X-Files is an important show. Laid the groundwork for a lot of shows we watch today, genre series. It'd be cool. I'd be into it. It's lasted a long time. Like they had Mulder and Scully, like David Duchovny and Gillian Anderson in a show like a couple of years ago. So for like a proper reboot, yeah, sure, bring it on. I'd be interested. Why not?
Yeah, I'd give it a chance for sure.
In the Last Kingdom corner of the internet, there is a new Last Kingdom book coming, but it is a Last Kingdom cookbook that also has stories written by Bernard Cornwell. It's called Uhtred's Feast. What's the deal with this one, Daniel?
Yeah, I think this is super cool and a little funny. So it is a cookbook with 80 recipes. Bernard Cornwell met this chef. So they're like Anglo-Saxon medieval recipes with some short fiction for Uhtred that Bernard Cornwell could never quite figure out a place to tell. So like one story when he was a boy, one when he was still an advisor to Alfred, stuff like that. I love this. It's fun to see something different, and I've never seen a cookbook story hybrid like that.
Yeah, I don't think anybody has.
Yeah, and yes, I ran long on the buzzer because Destiny is all. Speaking of innovating, I don't know if this is innovating. I don't know.
It's not.
I'm going to try to tell this with a straight face because I don't want to be a jerk. So this House of the Dragon watch, you're going to see a picture of in a sec. It's from Cross Studio. It's gorgeous. It costs a measly $117,443. And when are you getting yours, Dan?
I'm not. It comes with the egg, to be fair. So it's the watch and the egg for that. And there are multiple colors you can choose from. Cross Studio is like this really high-end watchmaker, and they've made other kind of like tie-in watches, I think, for like the Book of Boba Fett, they made one. And they're really, really expensive. They're Swiss. Those are prices in like Swiss francs, and I translated that to dollars. It seems expensive for a watch. It seems very expensive for a watch. I don't care if you made it out of like actual Valyrian steel. It seems expensive. It seems really expensive.
Which it is. Which
no,
I believe it is. I believe it's.
Well, Daniel,
it's not
the problem
Damascus
is
steel.
Valyrian steel isn't real, so it's not made of Valyrian steel, but it's made of like fancy steel. Yes, but it's not the same thing as it being made of Valyrian steel. Anyway,
that's fair.
Pricey ass watch, pricey ass dragon watch.
It's not forged in the fires of Valyria. Fine, but it looks cool.
Maybe I'm not sure it'd be worth that then, but it'd be a easier case. Daniel, Liv
Yes.
Tyler and Carl Lumbly will return to the Marvel Cinematic Universe in Captain America: New World Order, Captain America 4.
Yeah, I'm starting to get really hyped for this movie. So Liv Tyler was
Cool.
Betty Ross, so
Betty.
Thunderbolt Ross's daughter in the Incredible Hulk. This is her first time back in the MCU since then. So it's really cool to see them tying back to that movie. And Carl Lumbly, of course, was Isaiah Bradley in Falcon and the Winter Soldier. So they are
Remember him.
building out the cast for this thing. He was a total highlight. So I'm
Cool.
excited that they're both in this movie. All right,
We read that
last story.
Okay.
Huh?
We read that first buzzer, and then after that, we just failed every time. Anyway, go on.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, so this is a slight downer we're going to end with, but again, important news. So PETA condemned The Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power, after a horse died of cardiac arrest on the set.
Yes, a horse had a heart attack in the set of The Lord of the Rings: Rings of Power season 2, and PETA, which is the animal rights organization, slammed them for it in a pretty shady statement. I guess there's not much to say. I don't know if the horse death was something that couldn't be avoided, or if someone was responsible, they could have been more careful. I don't know. Should they only ever use CGI animals forever and ever? Maybe. I'm not sure about that either. I've been very unhelpful. That's what happened though, and now that's my opinion. And now the show's over. Guys, thank you for watching. It's a lot of fun. Some great comments today. Thank you all for weighing in. As Leo said, we saw Lady Gaga in American Horror Story. She'll do a great Harley Quinn. What's funny? I'm
laughing at Stephen Howie's comment.
That is good. Maybe the horse read the script and dropped dead.
Maybe it. Yeah.
Oh God,
brutal,
it was
Steven.
A genius horse, and we lost it to cardiac arrest.
Ooh.
I could read.
Oh God.
But yeah, exciting things happen. And if you enjoyed this, we're here every single Wednesday at 2 p.m. Central Standard Time. 3 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Mountain, 3 p.m. Noon West Coast. I assume I'm not sure what time it is in England, but some a period of time. Who knows? It's possible. And we're also available in podcast form on iTunes, Google Play, wherever you get your podcasts. We're there. Give us a like, give us a follow, give us a subscribe. Come back, hang out, ask more questions. Rap with us. We're just going to rap. We're going to answer. We're going to have a good time. Thanks for watching. Thank you, Martha, for watching. And see you next week when I will still not have my $117,000 watch from Cross Studios. Who needs that? When I have my $200,000 Valyrian steel anklet that you can't see because the camera doesn't go down that far. See you next week. Bye.
Take care, y'all.